Earlier today, we got the highly anticipated pause from the Federal Reserve. They stopped cutting rates, at least for now. They announced that rates would remain the same. Fed funds rate remains at 4.25% to 4.5%. I don't think anybody expected the Fed to cut, and nobody, of course, expected the Fed to hike. And the Fed rarely likes to disappoint the markets, and so we got nothing from the Fed. There was a bit of a reaction, but not much of a reaction. I think it initially, the markets reacted to a couple of tweaks to the language of the official statement. I think the most significant tweak was what was left out, not what was added.
Now we'll show you the best clips of the latest interview. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you do not miss out our daily recaps. Join our WhatsApp channel for real-time updates, breaking news, and expert predictions on gold, silver, and financial markets. Link in the description or pinned comment. Stay ahead of the curve. Don't miss out.
He expects the price of oil to drop sharply. And as a result of that big drop in oil prices, he would demand that the Fed cut rates immediately. So that hasn't happened yet. I mean, oil prices have come down from the high they hit a week or two ago, but they're still, $72, $73 a barrel. That's not the type of price drop that Trump spoke about, which would result in demanding that Powell cut interest rates. So he didn't say that he was going to demand that Powell cut rates right away. He predicated that on a big drop in oil prices. So that the whole question was unfair. But also, did Leisman really expect Powell to answer that question? Because if I was Powell, if I had a private conversation with the president, I'm not going to tell everybody what he told me. I mean, then he's never going to confide in me again. I mean, if you have a private conversation, you shouldn't ask, hey, what did the president tell you in confidence in private? I mean, you're not going to say. So even if there was a conversation, it makes sense that he's not going to tell the whole world about a conversation that took place in private. But now that the government owns the bank, nobody can get anything. Nobody gets their money now that the government's in charge, except the receiver who's getting rich, right? Who takes money out every month, right? To do what? I don't know, right? But in any event, the reason that I didn't bank crypto, and I wanted to bank crypto, I had a lot of friends, that are in the crypto industry that had businesses that I would have loved to have banked. I mean, even though I don't believe in it, I can bank the companies that are involved in it. I mean, why not? I mean, I could, provide them with banking services and make money, right? I mean, there are a lot of companies, I didn't bank gambling companies. I didn't bank online porn. I didn't bank, what else? Cannabis. Any of the cannabis companies. I didn't bank anybody who was politically connected. I didn't bank charities. Right there are all sorts of types of accounts that we refused to open, and the reason was the regulatory compliance was tougher. And with crypto, right, the risk was that there was money laundering going on. There was tax evasion. Right? Not everybody who utilized crypto was evading taxes or laundering money, but the incidence of people who were laundering money or raising taxes was higher in crypto than in other industries. And so the banks would have to have more scrutiny. And the question was it worth it? Was the extra AML compliance work that they would have to do to bank a crypto company, was it worth the income that they would make from banking? And if it wasn't, they do a cost-benefit analysis and they make a decision. But that was because of government regulations. Now, so if the government lightens up on the regulations, yes, and I was very critical of those AML regulations, which I think is one reason that the government targeted me to take out my bank, because I criticized all these regulations. Of course, I abided by them. That's what they found out when they audited our bank, that Schiff abides by every one of these regulations that he criticizes, right? So then they had to find another pretense to shut down the bank, because we didn't break any laws, even though I thought the laws violated the Constitution for multiple reasons. But then after Powell talked about just the regulatory environment and the banks and how they're operating with FDIC insurance and everything, then that's when the reporter followed up and said, well, but what about do you think there's any risk here? And even about whether there's a problem with asset bubbles. He was asked about asset bubbles in general, and he acknowledged that stock prices remain elevated, but he didn't mention that he was in any way concerned about bubbles or falling asset prices or any way tailoring his monetary policy to asset price, which I think is just not true. Of course, the Fed is very much concerned about asset prices. The last thing they want is asset prices to crash. The reason that they pumped up the money supply so much specifically was to get asset prices to go up. They were trying to create a wealth effect, and they don't want to see a reverse wealth effect when all that wealth vanishes when prices come down. But, they asked him again about Bitcoin. And that's when he said, look, I'm not going to comment on that. People make, their own decisions. But he didn't come out and specifically criticize people who want to own Bitcoin and make it a part of their portfolio. So I'm sure some people in the Bitcoin community are going to try to figure out a way to spin what he didn't say into some kind of official endorsement to try to pump the price up even more. Anyway, we got another commercial. I got a lot more to talk about. So stick around. I will be right back. They, either can make more money selling them or not have to raise the prices right away. But then if you look at the numbers, that's not it, because imports were up by 3.9%. I mean, that's a big number, but it's not crazy big. It's the exports. Exports went down by 4.5%. So there's an even bigger drop in exports than there was an increase in imports. You can't explain that in any way by trying to front run the tariffs, because the tariffs aren't going in the other direction. Unless you think that if our trading partners were worried about retaliatory tariffs, they would try to import more of our stuff before their government slapped tariffs on us. But that didn't happen that way. Our exports went down. And I think, again, that's evidence of a very weak U.S. economy, manufacturing economy that is in recession, that is incapable of producing these goods. Also, if you look at the December inventory numbers that came out also this morning, inventory on a wholesale level for December was expected to rise 0.3%. Instead, it went down by 0.5%. That's a big drop in wholesale inventories. By the way, retail inventories also went down 0.3. They were expected to stay unchanged. But if companies are trying to front run the tariffs by importing a lot of stuff, wouldn't their inventory go up? But their inventory went down. So it doesn't necessarily make sense that these companies are loading up on inventory when their inventory went down. And as a result, by the way, of these two numbers, the big trade deficit and the drop in inventories, the Atlanta Fed GDP now, which has its estimate for Q4 GDP, slashed their number from 3.2 down to 2.3. That is a big move for one adjustment. They normally don't move that much. So that is a big, decline in what the growth rate is. And of course, again, I think we're in a recession. I think these numbers don't really mean anything. I mean, I think the polls were a lot more meaningful. That's why Donald Trump was elected president, because we were in a recession that the statistics didn't actually validate or acknowledge. But getting back to this trade deficit, not only does it evidence a very weak economy, but it shows you how dependent we are now on the largesse of the rest of the world, and how the U.S. dollar's reserve status has never provided a bigger crutch to the U.S. economy, because the only reason we're able to run these huge trade deficits is because the world will take our dollars in exchange for all these goods. And without all these goods, our economy would implode, because we have no ability to produce these goods on our own. And it also shows you how painful the tariffs would be if they are in fact enacted, because we depend more on these foreign goods. We import more goods than ever before. And now Trump is talking about adding to the price of those goods by imposing tariffs. So if we've never been more dependent on foreign goods, then tariffs will never be more painful for Americans than they would be right now. Now, again, that doesn't mean I'm against tariffs. I'd rather have tariffs than income taxes, but that's not the point. The point is that Donald Trump is saying these are a panacea because...
Don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps out the channel. And if you want to stay updated with more content like this, be sure to subscribe and click the bell icon so you never miss a video.